about the tourism director. She's the one that came in and offered the amendment.
Right.
The reason that she gave the committee for offering the amendment is that they had already prepared these ads, but they were going to run them during the summer, after the filing deadline, and those ads had to be paid for. The radio stations and television stations were not going to do those for free. Those ads had to be paid for, and they were all, I think, in fact, the time might have already been bought. Some of the time had already been bought. And so she was concerned that if you did this, then she wasn't going to be able to put those ads on when they were most appropriate. That's why she submitted that request. There was nothing in that request that could be used to construe the statute construe the legislative history as some evidence that the governor came in and tried to get an exception so he could run tourism ads. That didn't happen.
There were public service ads.
The tourism ads were public service announcements, yes, but they had to pay for them because radio stations are not going to run those things for free.
Yeah, and that's, I think, that's the big difference between you and the Republican Party in this case is does this proper interpretation, does the statute go to things that the governor or some other public official pays to have run, as opposed to something that is produced? And
I think everybody understood that the prohibition was to pay for those ads. The prohibition clearly was to pay for it. And that's why, if anything, that exchange in the legislative history favors our view than it does the...
Well, at this point, I'm not sure. The beauty of the case, I think, is we've narrowed the factual issues down to where we don't... I don't see any reason to have any further factual inquiry, and I quite frankly, I understand the position of the parties relative to their interpretation of the law. And I can see how there is some history that supports potentially either interpretation. But you can proceed.
Well, I was only going to take one last opportunity to make it clear that, again, not one red penny of this state's funds were used to put that ad on the air. And I think the Republicans should be ashamed to bring this case to try to find the governor for asking, this is our governor, for asking our people to thank our farmers. I think that is what bristles mightily back of my neck. And frankly, if you follow the law, that we've given you, you don't reach that conclusion. And we would respectfully request that you grant a summary judgment in our favor based on the interpretation that we've given.
Thank you. And I would just say that if the tribunal accepts the Republicans' interpretation of the law, this is going to be, unless the legislature changes the law thereafter, it's going to be the law is assuming that we ever have a Republican governor, which I assume that we will have. So it's, to some extent, when I look at this case, it doesn't cut in favor of or against Democrats or Republicans. We're just talking about the law, and it's going to be the law that's going to be applicable to all public officials, regardless of what their political party is. It just happens that this particular issue arose when this particular individual is the governor. Let me ask counsel for the Republican Party, Mr. Lovell, do you have any additional comments? And before you start, I don't care whether this public service announcement was